You are entering the realm of the Time Prophet. Exploring the darker regions of time and the world about us. I bring you cowboys, I bring you death, I bring you danger and love and romance, I bring you terror, I bring you the Valley of Gwangi. Westerns at one time were very popular, but there came a time when the Western started to lose popularity, around the late 60s, 1969 to be precise. I mean, it had been done to death. There was only so many times a cowboy could shoot an Indian. Only so many times you could send a posse after the bad guy. So what have Westerns been missing all these years? What is the one thing that would make the Western live again, apart from Clint Eastwood of course? The answer comes from the past, about 1 billion years in the past. The answer is the dinosaur. Meet Tucker, a tough, womanizing, hard-drinking cowboy and businessman. Meet his love interest, Cash, lots of cash, and even though he is doing well, he wants more cash. Oh, there is his old girlfriend, whom he dumped because he couldn't be tied down to a one woman. This is the country where real men were real men. Real women were real women, and tiny horses were not real tiny horses. These were horses created by the master of stop-motion animation, Ray Harryhausen. Actually, there was only one tiny horse, but the line wouldn't have worked any other way. I will keep rambling on like this, and eventually, if you wait long enough, you might hear something about the movie, The Valley of Gwangi. So the movie starts off with a bunch of cowboys looking for their friend, and finally they find him, blood-soaked and carrying a small sack. He says one word before dying, Gwangi. Sound coming from the sack sounds like a horse, but it can't be. It's too small. We get the obligatory warning from the local witch, Tia Zarina, played by Frida Jackson, who is really clever because she is blind but can see signs.
One day he will learn to obey the law of Gwangi. Or like his brother, he will perish.
In the sack was a tiny horse. She named it El Diablo, so from there we knew we were off to a bad start, as that means the devil. All this before the credits roll. Cut to Tucker, played by James Franciscus, walking through the town with his bag and all dressed up to the nines. The first person he meets is Lopi, played by Curtis Arden, who is a young Mexican entrepreneur, like Tucker probably was when he was young. Lopi was a small boy who kinda knew everything about the area and would do anything for a few pesos. For example, finding horses, finding people, local guide and general dog's body. At first Tucker more or less told him to get lost, but then he realised he could be useful. So here we are, somewhere south of Rio Grande, in a nondescript town somewhere in Mexico, and the Breckenridge Wild West show is in town. Luckily, Tucker's love interest, TJ, played by Gila Jolan, is running the show. In fact, she is the main attraction. Her main showpiece is to ride a horse up a construction of wood and timber and jump the horse into a giant tank of water surrounded by a ring of fire. It wasn't a good time for horses in these days, because I am sure if this was real it would do real damage to the horse's back. If you were a lover of animals, this would be a good time to close your eyes. Luckily they didn't use real horses for this scene. The horse you see go into the tank is actually a toy horse, bought for a couple of cents from a toy shop, and they rigged an explosive charge to make the water splash up. Stupid thing is in the next shot after the horse has jumped into the tank, they show him coming out about halfway up the tank. I am not sure how the horse managed to get out when there was obviously no way for the horse to get up that high from inside. Movie trickery, that's all I can say. So Tucker and TJ used to be partners in more ways than one, but Tucker left to find fame and fortune and his true love, money. TJ didn't want to speak to him ever again. We know later this is bound to change, with his winning good looks, his square-jawed chin, and his pockets full of money. Lopi tries to commit suicide by taking on a bull in the arena, even though he should have known full well what a bull would do to him. I mean, he is portrayed as intelligent, and suddenly he does something so stupid. Tucker has to save him because he is the hero, and this is the kind of thing that heroes do. But Carlos is the real hero. He tackles the bull, but it is quickly glossed over because he isn't the hero type. TJ tells Tucker that Carlos bought him a new hat, meaning the little horse, and Tucker's heroic act was good enough to get back in TJ's good books. But the camera tastefully changes to the next scene like only good movies know how to do. TJ brings Tucker to see El Diablo, the little horse, and opens a music box which promptly makes the horse come out on full display. It is a great scene, but it is amazing how they managed to train a horse this quickly.
You want a little sugar, don't you? Carlos found him.
He must have been in a gold mine, because that's what he is, solid gold.
It took a while to train him, but now he's about ready for his debut.
Well, what's the act?
I wondered at first why we need Ray Harryhausen to animate a tiny horse, and they could have just got a full-size horse and superimposed it to look smaller. But we find out later from Professor Bromley that it wasn't really a tiny horse at all, but a closely related ancestor to the horse called the Eohippus. He went into great detail of how the toes were separated into three, unlike current horses, which went straight over Tucker's head, because he was thinking of the money. However, he didn't go into enough detail because he forgot to mention that it should have been the size of a small fox, and this Eohippus was much smaller. So the Professor Bromley was interested in finding out the origin of the little horse for science. The hero couldn't be underhand because he is the hero, and so he was only a womanizing entrepreneur, which was a good thing in the 1900s and still a good thing in 1969 when the movie came out. So the professor wants to find out where the Eohippus came from, but the evil witch woman wouldn't tell him. So the underhand professor lets the evil witch woman know where the Eohippus was, knowing she would steal it, and then he would follow the evil witch woman to the origin of the species, so as to speak. Tucker, being the good guy entrepreneur, sees the evil people stealing the horse, but because he is the hero, he doesn't catch up with them quickly enough, or the movie would have been over too quickly. However, he wouldn't have known anything if Lope hadn't spilled the beans over the price of a lemonade and told him that the professor was up to no good. Of course, in the meantime, Carlos tells TJ that it was Tucker that stole the horse, after he wanted to save face because he was knocked out by a dwarf helping the mad blind witch woman steal the horse. So TJ gets a couple of her hands to go after Tucker. Carlos guesses that they might be going to the Hidden Valley and shows TJ a shortcut, so TJ manages to get there before Tucker. Tucker catches up with the professor and Lope and finds that the professor has managed to lose the evil gypsy witch henchman.
Help! Now, Professor, where's that little horse?
I don't know.
You don't know?
The witch's henchmen free El Diablo because freeing the devil is always a good idea. The professor claims that the circle of mountains is the perfect barrier to keep the dinosaurs safe from the world about us and the elements. Although, if they made a modern version of this movie, it wouldn't be a perfect barrier for satellites. So it wasn't just the Valley of Gwangi, but more widely known as the Forbidden Valley, a sort of early Area 51 for dinosaurs.
Might be the answer to anything.
Like what?
We shall soon see, Mr.
The
Perry.
professor says the valley could be the answer to many things, but when questioned he couldn't answer because the script said so. Then the pteranodon kills the horse, which is strange, because the perfect barrier does not stop pteranodons getting out, so the perfect barrier was getting seemingly imperfect by the minute. Also, you see the pteranodon fly away without the horse, and yet there's blood splattered everywhere and no horse. So where the horse went we shall never know. Tucker, Professor and Lope carry on, riding the two remaining horses, and come across TJ's camp. TJ throws a lasso around Tucker and claims she has caught a horse thief. Then, out of the blue, the little horse turns up. He didn't escape when he had the chance, and they see him with one of the larger horses. TJ lassos the horse, and Tucker lets him go. No, Tucker didn't do it for humanity's sake. He needed to find out where the horse would go, and the little horse gets away and runs through a small crack in the mountain, just big enough for a little horse, which is what I am after saying all this. Strangely enough, this is the only little horse that ever came through the crack. It is astounding that only one little horse ever came through, seeing that the whole valley is full of horse-eating dinosaurs. If I was a little horse, and there was a hole in the mountain, which was little horse size, I would definitely go back and get my little horse family, pack my little horse bags, and get away from the terrifying dinosaurs. Unfortunately, this is the last time we see the horse in this movie. It doesn't even get a mention again, and in my mind, he was the star of the movie. The crack is just big enough for a man to squeeze in, but not big enough for full-size horses. The cowboys are disappointed their normal-sized horses won't fit through the hole. So they put ropes on their horses and pull down a whole section of mountain, which doesn't fall on them at all. So a couple of horses can pull down a mountain, but the Gwangi and 1,000 other dinosaurs in the valley couldn't get out, even though they are a lot bigger than the normal-sized horses, and would have been on the lookout for any new sources of food. Well, I say thousands of dinosaurs, but we only really see 3 or 4 in the whole movie. It wouldn't have been like that if Steven Spielberg was in charge. One thing this movie has over Jurassic Park is that you actually see blood. What Mr. Spielberg didn't show in his movies, that when a dinosaur bites your head off, there would be a lot of blood about. That is one thing that this movie has over Mr. Spielberg's movie, although I do like Jurassic Park when I'm in the mood. The Pteranodon picks up the small boy called Lopi, and instead of flying up high to the nearest mountain peak to eat him, kindly flops down to the ground and just sits there, and waits to be killed like any other bird wouldn't. Of course, like any other explorers in a new world, they promptly kill the Pteranodon. Carlos ruthlessly twists its neck until it is dead. The professor incorrectly calls it a pterodactyl, and as we all know, it isn't. Well, if you've been listening to me all this time, a pterodactyl does not have the crest on top of his head. What Carlos killed was a pteranodon, so the professor needs to actually go back to school and learn the difference. What's more amazing is that Lopi was grabbed by the shoulders and yanked into the air and didn't suffer any dislocation at all. So they suddenly spot a plucked turkey,
Let's get him for the show.
or an Omnifomnius, as it is commonly known by, and they decide to get it for the show. Then the Gwangi shows up and bites the plucked turkey in one fell sweep. The Gwangi, commonly known as an Allosaurus, would have been quite content to stop and eat its meal if it wasn't for the intelligent cowboy who decides to shoot the Gwangi because of reasons. At this point in the movie, I think the director gives up the ghost and the whole tone of the movie changes. You're almost wondering if you're watching the same film. Apparently, the plot of this movie was taken from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World, but I think this was the part in the movie the director lost the plot. So the movie moves from an intelligent story about dinosaurs to the stupidity of humans. There is a professor who wants to study dinosaurs, an entrepreneur who wants to make money out of dinosaurs, and a Wild West show that wants to capture the dinosaurs for the show. But all they end up doing is shooting every dinosaur they see, even the Styracosaurus with its thick armoured skin, and was a herbivore, so he wouldn't have been interested in eating any of them anyway. Then they find out that the bullets they were firing at the dinosaurs turned out to be blanks that they used in the show, which you would have thought a tough cowboy would have checked before leaving camp. Then TJ discovers that Tucker wasn't a horse thief after all. So there is this scene where TJ tells him she's going to sell the show, sell everything, and Tucker stares into her eyes and tells her he's been looking for something all of his life. It took a lot of finding, but he finally found it, and she stares back romantically and he tells her he's been looking for the most beautiful ranch you ever did see, and raise cattle and horses, and she slips in, kids maybe, and then they kiss. Then Tucker decides to go and look for the Gwangi on his own, and there is no reason why he does this, and he finds what he is looking for, or rather the Gwangi finds him. So Tucker rides away with the Gwangi chasing him. Luckily TJ and the rest of the cowboys realise he's gone and they are ready for the dinosaur to show up. They are organised this time and they throw the lasso over the Gwangi in the hope of catching him until a Styracosaurus makes his second entrance. Tucker and the rest of the cowboys see the Styracosaurus and decide to make a run for it. The Styracosaurus, being a herbivore, decides to attack the Gwangi. He obviously mistakenly thought it was a giant cabbage or was so hungry he didn't care anymore. The Styracosaurus was actually winning the battle. There was quite a few times it had the Gwangi on the floor until Carlos intervened, throwing the spear at the poor Styracosaurus. Now if I was going to throw a spear at one of them, it would certainly be the meat eater and not the herbivore. The herbivore would certainly not be chasing me after the battle is over. Perhaps it is because they wanted to capture the Gwangi for the show, but certainly the Styracosaurus would have looked great in the show and would have eaten a lot less people. So the Gwangi kills the confused Styracosaurus and instead of staying there for a good feed, decides to leave his food behind and go looking for little cowboys. When a lion in the jungle kills its prey, it has no interest in looking for food, but why does the Gwangi decide to leave his food to go looking for smaller morsels? So the Gwangi chases them towards the mountain entrance. Carlos is a bit slow and is grabbed by the Gwangi and promptly gets chomped in a way that is never ever shown in any Steven Spielberg movie. They ride through a small gap in the mountain and the Gwangi gets stuck in the entrance because it is too small for him to pass. He pushes hard and the mountain comes down on him and knocks him out. Right, so 1 minute you see the unconscious Gwangi, and in the next shot the Gwangi is in the back of a wagon upright. How on earth did they manage to pick up a heavy dinosaur and put him on a wagon, let alone stand him upright, without some kind of crane or complicated pulley system? Then the evil witch person turns up to tell them she knew Carlos was dead and said they were all doomed because she saw it in a dream. So TJ wants to take the Gwangi on a world tour, but the professor calls them mad because he wants to study it for science. Tucker wants no part of it and says he thought she was going to sell the show and walks out.
Senorita, you must go after Mr. Kirby. He's a very proud man, and he'll never come back.
She runs after Tucker and kisses him because he is the hero. Meanwhile, the evil witch woman has sent her dwarf to open the cage of the Gwangi. She is really clever by predicting they were all doomed and then making her predictions come true by actually causing the event she predicted. So the dwarf takes one of the bolts out of the cage, weakening the door, and promptly gets eaten for his trouble. They pull down the curtains to show the Gwangi with the dwarf in his mouth, who looks surprisingly large compared to the size of the Gwangi. The Gwangi prepares to break free from his cage and mass panic ensues. The evil witch woman is wondering why the dwarf hasn't come back to guide her out, and didn't foresee him becoming dinosaur food. So the Gwangi breaks free from its cage, and an elephant breaks free from its owner. Now most elephants in this situation would probably run away, but this was a mad elephant and decided to fight the Gwangi. To me, this scene seems rather problematic. I have always thought the scale of the dinosaur and the elephant was wrong. I would have thought that the Gwangi would have been much bigger than the elephant. However, after doing a little reading, the elephant was supposed to be one of the larger elephants and was supposed to be 15 feet high. The real elephant they used in the scenes before this was only 8 feet high, and so that was the reason in the end they used a stop motion elephant. Still, to me the scale feels off, and this fight seems very unnatural. So the Gwangi kills the elephant because the movie is called The Valley of Gwangi, but I believe the elephant may have survived if the movie was called The Valley of Elephant. Alas, this was not the case. Tucker manages to lure the Gwangi into the cathedral and closes the door behind him, trapping him, TJ and Lopi inside. Yes, you heard it, Lopi, who hasn't been in the movie for 20 minutes, suddenly turns up so that he can get trapped in a cathedral with a dinosaur. His entrepreneurial ways need a rethink, I think. Tucker somehow manages to get up on the balcony and start taunting the Gwangi with some spray thing. The Gwangi would have ripped him to shreds, but Tucker fell onto the organ keys, and the sounds startled the Gwangi. Tucker threw the spear and hit the poor Gwangi in the head. As Tucker, TJ and Lopi escape from the Gwangi, Tucker throws a burning pot at the dinosaur, and due to the lax fire regulations in Mexico at the time, the whole place catches fire pretty quick. So the cathedral goes up in flames and the Gwangi succumbs to a fiery death. I always felt sorry for the Gwangi. Cut to the shot of Lopi with a tear in his eye. I am not sure if he is crying for the Gwangi, the cathedral burning, or if he got a bit of soot in his eye while escaping. TJ and Tucker stand there and watch the cathedral burn as well. I think he will have to save some more money for that ranch now, as her show has probably gone up in flames too. Okay, I will start with what I don't like about the movie, and then I will conclude with what I like. The worst thing about this movie is animal cruelty. Yes, I know the horse did not really jump into the fiery tank, I am not concerned with that. And I know real dinosaurs did not really die in the movie. I am talking about the Wild West show at the beginning of the movie, where you see horses being dragged to the ground, stuntmen jumping from horse to horse, and horses genuinely being tripped. I'm sure some of the shots look more dangerous than they are, but it was a common thing in those days that the horses would be treated very badly, and some would get twisted legs and be left in agony. Perhaps I'm being oversensitive, but I hate to see any animal treated like this. Thankfully nowadays there are better laws and alternatives to this kind of treatment. I also felt the scaling of the elephant to the Gwangi was wrong. I felt that the elephant was too big in relation to the Gwangi. When Lopi got picked up by the pteranodon, he would definitely have dislocated arms and no way would he be carrying on after that. Also, in multiple shots he was suddenly injured in different places and the continuity is all over the place. Starts off with claw marks down his left side and then later you see them on his right side. Now follows some nitpicking. The first bite marks Gwangi leaves on the Styracosaurus disappear in later shots. Early on, young Lopi tells Tucker that the arena is 2 miles outside of town, but the fact that the Gwangi goes straight from the arena to the cathedral in one shot means it definitely wasn't. The colour of the Gwangi changed from scene to scene because there was no time to do colour matching in the movie. Professor Bromley keeps referring to a pterodactyl, and it is actually a pteranodon. Pterodactyls did not have crests on their head. Probably mentioned this already. There is a scene of the same cowboy falling off a horse multiple times when the Gwangi is chasing them. Okay, so here is my favourite bit. I love this movie and I've watched it hundreds of times, so it was hard to say what I thought was bad about the movie, and so here is what I love about the movie. I love the little Eohippus. If there is anything about this movie, it is that little horse, and the animation is excellent. The Eohippus is the main star of the movie, not the Gwangi. Before I did this review, in my head I remember the horse. I never remember the Gwangi. The Ray Harryhausen stop motion animation is as good as ever, and apparently it took him a year to do it. He was a genius. Tucker was perfect for the part of the hard-jawed American entrepreneur. And it didn't end like most movies do, where he kisses the girl at the end. He does kiss her earlier in the movie, but at the end you can see that in his mind he was thinking about the terror he brought back to this small Mexican town and the destruction of the cathedral, which would have been very important to the people of that time. Another high point was the acting by Lawrence Naismith, who plays Professor Horace Bromley. He was portrayed well, even though he did get some of his facts wrong. I love the idea of cowboys and dinosaurs, and the concept has never been repeated. There was a movie about cowboys and aliens, but never cowboys and dinosaurs. I will give this movie 9 out of 10. Now at first I thought about giving it 10 out of 10, but I knocked a point off for the animal cruelty. I know it was of its time, but they could have removed that whole scene and it wouldn't have made much difference to the movie. I've always remembered the movie being in black and white, probably because the first time I saw the movie, we had a black and white TV. So I was pleasantly surprised to find that the movie was actually in colour on the rewatch. This movie is dying for a sequel. Where was Mrs. Gwangi? What happened to the Gwangi kids at the babysitters? Although, with the state of sequels and remakes nowadays, I hope they never make a remake of this movie. Please just go and watch The Valley of Gwangi. It is time for the Time Prophet to leave this universe. Please subscribe, and I will bid you farewell. Good night, Doomcock.
Good night to the Time Prophet